Part 3 of the wonderful world of A.E. Karnes finds us up at Blackgates Engineering. Alex needed to go up there and buy some parts. Once he'd bought all the parts, we went back to the workshop and he carried on cleaning my engine.
Right now, I live near Boston, Massachusetts, but I was brought up on the Connecticut coastline with a direct rail link to New York City, the city of light and power and energy and chaos. Right now, at Keith's shop, I'm in the middle of Dewsbury. Don't know much about the area, really. All I know is I'd rather move to England, because all the stuff I love is here. Keith.
What's up?
Why do you have the number 300 on your door?
Well, there's a film called 300, which is nothing to do with that. I think it's a bridge number. A friend of mine gave me quite a few of these cast metal plates. And 300, it reminds me of the film, the 300 Spartans.
The Spartans, yeah. Thing is, I like it here in the UK. Everything I love is right here. And we could really take a footnote from them about how to preserve our history, because we don't do that much of it in the United States, and it would be nice if we did. In England, it's pretty rare to not find a place with a running steam engine in it, or one that's being restored to work. And history here, physical history, is revered. It's part of the national culture. As I said before, I've been in places that are fairly close to the Muppet dimension before. You will do working with the kind of things I work with and the kind of people I work with. But this is just a little disconcerting. I haven't seen Mr. Appleton really putting the thing in these different places. He just sort of sneaks them there as I work, or maybe it moves by itself. I really don't know. My friend Philip Beard and I had many of these moments when we were in New Jersey slaving away on a machine that you're not really sure you'll ever finish, and the entire place is piled with an avalanche waiting to happen of railroadiana that we weren't allowed to get rid of, and all kinds of other things are going on. Your mind tends to run away with itself, and you start seeing things like that, and you start making up things like that. In fact, I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent. That waterworks was in a right state when we got it, and the vandals had smashed out all the windows, among other things. And this one instance, we had to get to an oil trap under the floor, which was part of the oil return system. And this is a bowl-shaped thing. It looks a bit like a steam trap, and it's got a lid that's held onto the top by 6 dogs, a bit like a smoke box door. The thing is, the lid itself, even though it was removable, had all kinds of pipes running into it. And they were all different sizes of pipe, and they were all put in no real hole center pattern. It was just drilled in random places. And so once we'd gotten all the pipes out of it, and you had to look at it from the top, this circular thing with all these randomly sized holes in it at random locations, I said, well, what does that look like to you? And he said, well, the moon, of course. I said, it's exactly what it is. And then we decided that this was the moon, and that the reason all the windows were smashed out is because every night the thing would fly off of there and fly out the window and sort of glue itself up in the sky, as astrophysics tends to work. And, and then, of course, it would come back every night. And the reason that all the windows were smashed is because, of course, if you watch the moon, if you're an observant type of person, you'll see it's in a different spot in the sky every hour, every night. So, of course, it's going to be coming out and in at different angles, isn't it?
In this country, we have a phone number you can ring for problems like this. You talk to someone called Frank.
I was just using pure naphtha to loosen up all the rust and caked on things on this engine. And now what I'm doing is, I'm getting rid of the naphtha residue and any of the stuff that was left behind by the naphtha drying off and leaving sort of a rusty splotch. This is an oil naphtha mixture. What I'm doing is I'm painting it on very wet and very thick, and it carries this stuff away as it drips down. I really like this engine. I like the way Keith has built it. I've seen a lot of Titch locomotives. Most of them don't run right because they're not built right. A few of them do in 3.5. This one here, Keith has paid a lot of attention to the running gear and the chassis. And like I said before, it's overbuilt. It looks like it would really work as a contractor's engine.
I was just saying to Alex that when I built this engine, before I finished it, when it was just a chassis without the boiler on or anything else, I ran it round the track. And my excuse was to make sure that the track was okay and that it stayed on the track. And indeed it did. And I've mentioned before, the suspension on this engine is very soft and it wobbles about. Cue Alex wobbling the engine about.
Why do you call it Ken, Keith?
That was my father's name. Been dead for many years. I think he died in 1990.
Right.
And he died far too young, 65 years old.
And you said he was a brass smith?
No, that was my grandfather. He was a brass founder, worked in a foundry. No, my father was a lorry driver, long-distance lorry driver. A very interesting chap.
That's a tough job.
He seemed to like it. He was very much a free spirit. And it suited him. He didn't like being told what to do. He just knew what he had to do and got on with it. It was a bit like me, really.
That's a lot of us. We've flipped the engine around, and now I'm doing what I did to the first side to the other side. And it's the same thing. Lots of crud to get rid of. And this is an endless job in an engine shed.
And if we'd have left the camera running by flipping the engine around, well, I don't think we exactly flipped it. We struggled with it and did a little dance around the workshop. And what's really strange about this is once upon a time, when I was a younger man, when I built this in 1996, not 1645, I could pick this up and move it around, carry it outside, put it down on the track, lift it off the track, put it back on the bench, push it round to the engine shed. But now I'm old and decrepit, I can't do that anymore. And I've only really got death to look forward to.
And me as well. I'm looking forward to that.
What, death?
Your death.
Oh, thanks.
This is actually quite a minor job. On our locomotive, my friend and Phil and I always wanted a proper locomotive, so we sent away to England for it. We got a Baltic tank from Simon Hudson. A rather unique 3.5-inch gauge London, Tilbury, and Southend Baltic tank with one of the most wonderful paint jobs I have ever seen on an engine. And when we got it, we decided we were going to keep it basically at museum standard, even though we were going to run it. So after every run, because we like to run the wheels off that thing, we spend about 3 or 4 hours with it, and I sit underneath it on a chair or a cardboard box, staring up through a hole in the rolling road, cleaning the underside with Q-tips so it doesn't have a chance to get like this at all. And that there is really, really fine cleaning. And you can't let something get crudded up, especially something that nice. If the NRM ever let me fire up the Midland Spinner or Sterling Single, it would be the same thing. Because of the way life unfolded and because I never had much money, I couldn't go to school for it, so I'm self-taught. But I've got a leg up over most engineers in a certain way because when I was young, this was the very end in the New York and Connecticut area of reciprocating steam in industries and other old machinery. In fact, the New York City subway system was still running 100-year-old rotary converters to change their current types up until I was a teenager. And the thing is, I would go and sneak around into these places and talk to the engineers and sometimes bribe them with a little bit of money. And I was doing things like running the machines and oiling them and sometimes even synchronizing alternator engines to the grid. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I got to visit a place called Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. And a lot of people in steam will have heard of this, but it was basically a complete 1904 reciprocating DC current generating power plant with steam engines and turbines and old boilers and pumps, virtually undisturbed thanks to the very conscientious chief engineer who ended up getting run out sort of unpleasantly due to some new management. And I was very lucky to see all places like this when I was young and get a lot of hands-on experience and talk to a lot of old guys who really knew what they were doing and who had come up the old-fashioned way through the industry.
Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website. Click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you will find it very easy to find other videos that you may like to watch.